All right, guys, what's going on, fellow art warriors? Welcome back to another monthly challenge critique stream. This is for the month of May in 2023. And as always, we have some really cool pieces that you guys have drawn up for us, and I'm excited to kind of dive into it. And as always, I've got Alice with me.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, we're trying something new with the Discord stage channels, so we'll see how this goes. And
hmm
for people that are, I guess, either going to hop out early or anything like that, we are recording this and we're going to put it up on YouTube later, so you can watch the rest of it if you so desire. Okay, cool. Let's get into it. So the challenge for this past month was a chalice was raised as the toast commenced. And Alice and I had a chance to take a look at these, and we think that the winner for this month should be Megalit's piece. We thought that Megalit did a really good job and has some really funny and interesting things going on with her piece. So we'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah.
Let me grab the first piece. All right, Biaro is first on my list, and he's already in here, so
hmm
might as well just start with his stuff. Okay. I like that Biaro always does these little like character sheets, and what I really appreciate is he's stepped up his presentation as well as his composition, as you'll see in his illustration, and these are things we've been harping on him about for quite a while. So I'm happy to see that he's kind of like taken to heart some of our feedback.
Yeah, this is like every single time you submit one, it is looking even better. So, good on you, man. I think you like diversified your character designs a lot this time around, and I think it was well worth the effort.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's read through what he says. Nodding shade villagers nestled amidst. That's such a hard word to say. The verdant expanse of Vest Valley lies the village of Nodding Shades. Here, a close knit community thrives off the land and each other. Their days are brimming with warmth and togetherness as they diligently care for one another and create a haven away from the hostile and ever changing world. Visitors of all shapes and sizes are welcome with open affection, although it's important to understand that blending into a society built by and for down folk might require a little extra effort. Cool. I like all of the thoughtfulness in the text. Just some initial feedback, and this is going back to some of the little kind of like panel elements, but and Alice has been working on some UI stuff recently, so it's making me think about this, but like just kind of like adding some little corners or something, some little like nice picture book style elements to frame this box. I feel like that already kind of like sets it back a little bit more and helps you kind of focus in on this big block of text. I feel like when you're thinking about text elements and more graphic-y elements, it kind of needs to match the aesthetic. And although right now like UI elements are very very like minimalistic and just like big blank panels like this, you're kind of presenting this like whimsical foresty like kind of fantastical scenery and characters. So kind of reflecting that with some of these graphic elements is going to help everything feel a lot more connected. I like the little bro.artstation.com as well. You might want to. This is another nitpick, but this is kind of important stuff for presentation, especially if you're ever going to send this, to get work or send it to a client or whatever. I just think white text is going to stand out a little bit more than that blue text, especially because you don't really
Yeah.
have that blue color like anywhere else. And then you might also want to just like frame your icon with white potentially, just so that this stands out as a little element. It's like if you're gonna slap it in there, it's kind of like you want to make sure that people see it, because on first read I like literally didn't even see it until I started really looking around. Okay. The other thing that's kind of bothering me about this is like I know with all of these you're kind of just doing like quick roughs just to like get it sort of going so you have designs for your characters, but I don't know, this wheel like just needs like some depth. Hey,
Oh,
Pavel
hey,
just
Pavel's in the, yeah.
yeah, hopped in.
Hi, Pavel. Welcome in.
Yeah.
Um, I also have to be a little nitpicky and say like
Yeah.
anytime that you've got text in your images, like for a presentation or something, do a second read through and make sure you don't have any typos.
Mhm.
Um, it's like I think a lot of people in the professional art world like aren't going to be as stringent about it because it's like, everybody makes typos, like it's not a big deal, but like personally it just gets me. And I feel
I
like
agree.
if everything is like totally sharp and perfect and like there are no mistakes in your like punctuation or grammar or whatever, and you can even run it through like a service to get it fixed, like an AI service, um,
I
which
think
is
even as simple as like making sure you type it up in a Google document
yeah.
first to check your red underlines and then copy and paste it into here. I don't know if you like originally typed it right in your Photoshop document, but that would definitely
Mhm.
help.
Yeah, it gives the impression that you like are meticulous and that
Hmm.
no uh, small details escape your notice.
Hmm.
Um, and that's, important when you are trying to present yourself professionally.
Yeah. The other thing too is again you kind of have this like storybook like hard looking grass, and I almost just want to see that reflected in these trees as well. It's like you could potentially just make this like a two shade kind of cutout style, like a light half and a dark half, just to give it some volume. But like having all this brushstrokey stuff up here is kind of distracting, and I think again this helps frame here. If I zoom out, this like frames the overarching piece a little bit better.
Mm.
Okay, and then the other thing too that I wanted to kind of discuss is like I know you're kind of going in a slightly different style with these characters compared to the other characters you've presented us, but I almost just want you to really push if you're gonna do these like uh, animal characters, like push the anatomy a little bit more, like really look at how like fox legs are and see if you can try to have them not be so like humanoid. I guess I just think it would lend itself towards more interesting characters if you're really forcing yourself to kind of like think outside the box with like how these fox people are like dressed. And so if the leg is like that, it's like does the boot come up to here or does it just come up
Yeah.
to here, like where the sort of toes are. Like if I look at my cat, like it's really just like they're literally standing on the last like bones in their hands, you know what I mean? So and I believe that's what foxes are like as well. um, so I don't know.
It's
It's
a
just
digitigrade uh, shaped leg. That's what they're
hmm.
called.
So yeah, it's just something to kind of think about as you kind of push yourself with this sort of style you're going for. Um, and this is one of the things you kind of have to like take what I say with a grain of salt, but it's just something I've been kind of noticing. It's just they they feel like too human to have these kinds of faces. It's like kind of trying to find that balance. Like, here's another example. Maybe their arms are like a little bit lengthier and more exaggerated, right? Like, feel more like gangly. I don't know, in a
Oh,
way.
yeah. Here's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, BRO, if you've been playing the new Zelda game, or
Mm,
if you played the one before, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. But think about how the different like animal-ish races in that
yeah.
game are like built different than the humans.
Yeah.
When you like add animalistic characteristics to a humanoid character, you have a like huge opportunity to do cool stuff with their um like proportions and their face and like the way that they talk, the way that they move, the way that they dress. And you've explored that somewhat, I think, in some of your designs. Like I remember the kind of like weaselly people that you did last time.
Yeah.
They were like really long and lanky, but it wasn't super pushed.
Hmm.
Um, and like just taking a look at like some animal skeletal structures or animal like muscular builds, like they're very different from
Hmm.
humans, and um sort of Frankensteining it up and see like how you can um chop and screw it and like make it new and make it yours, for uh like mixing character design and creature design, um could be a great opportunity for you to really flex your skills and flex your brain. Um, so I wrote down a couple of artists that you might be interested in looking at, for like the more storybook style that you're interested in, that you're maybe showcasing here.
Hmm.
I was thinking of like the original Redwall storybook artist, Christopher Denise, and I can write these down in the chat. And then another artist that I came across like a while ago who did some illustrations for like board games and stuff is Kyle Farron, um, who has like a really sort of wacky, uh, more scribbly style, but is still very like honoring like animals in their bodies
Hmm.
and like how they can translate to like being on two legs. Um, and then like check out the creature designer Bobby Rebholz. He's got some wacky stuff. Um, and is like also constantly posting. So there's like new stuff that you can see all the time. I will write those names in the chat if you want to see them. Um, but yeah, like I can tell that you're very interested in crafting animal people, which is super cool, but like making them a little bit more yours, I think maybe like sort of putting some flair on it.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's about like pushing, right? And I know I've said
Yeah.
this before in other streams, but you kind of have to look at your designs and be like, okay, is this the coolest way I could possibly approach doing this thing? And if you're constantly asking yourself that, you're bound to come up with some like really interesting and unique feeling designs and designs that feel more you. So like a good example of this I think with your piece is like these hats. Like I like that they're all really decorated and they feel very whimsical and they fit the sort of scenery. Um so it's like I know you got it in you. It's just about like pushing those sorts of elements with everything, right? So um that's a good opportunity to kind of jump into discussing this piece because I know we were hanging out for a couple sessions in voice chat while you were specifically working on this, and you were showing me kind of where you were going with the 3D model and everything. And I know this is kind of like one of your first times, like really using this stuff in lighting, so it does take some practice. But I think one thing to consider is to not let the 3D model um, kind of make
Take
your
over.
design, yeah, take over and make your design decisions for you. So an example of that is like this table is really nice. It's pretty well lit for the lighting scenario that you're presenting us, but it feels like kind of plain, right? And I know this is a very ambitious piece. I feel like you always kind of bite off these like super ambitious pieces, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Um, but I think what could have been cool, for example, if my pen wants to draw, is like okay, maybe the corners of the table have some sort of like engraving wooden design element to it that looks like this is a really expensive table that they all are sort of joining in these in this festivity sort of like together, And like this is like a set piece sort of asset. You're like really trying to push like I don't know, there's some like floral stuff. Like you can look at kind of wooden table designs and see these sorts of things crafted by people in real life. Um, and that's what you really want to try to push in your illustrations. It's just like kind of the beauty of everything. Like I can this is a ton of characters to render, so I definitely understand how this can take a long time. But this is also a good uh, opportunity, like teaching opportunity for yourself, where you're like, okay, if I was going to do this again, can I still get the same feeling across, maybe from a slightly different perspective, where you don't need to render out like 10 characters. Maybe you only need 3 characters in the scene, and then you just do a couple arms that are kind of like poking out of the sign or the side, right? That are like it's like holding a beer mug or whatever, to kind of indicate that like you're in it. The camera that is seeing the scene is like in the scene, and you're hanging out with all of these other creatures. Like if you literally just did this, like look at how many characters that I'm knocking out. 3 whole characters while even pushing some more depth. So it kind of goes back to that like sort of planning idea, where you're kind of considering like, okay, what's the best use of my skill and my time to be able to make sure I'm able to get this thing done and polished and able to get it as a portfolio piece. Because I know you guys have lives and you're doing a bunch of other stuff, but if you're going to commit to do a month long illustration, you should be able to like totally render the crap out of an illustration within a month, and then ideally have it be like a portfolio piece. So that's why a lot of times I suggest to you guys like, you have like maybe too much in the canvas going on. And I probably could have brought this up earlier when I was looking at your 3D model, but I wasn't even really thinking ahead of like everything that you're going to have to do. Um, so those are some of the things to kind of start thinking about in advance. Um, because I can just tell like you're like, okay, I really like rendered all these characters. I don't have time to like, make the table look really cool or make these benches different. Like I think even having little peaks of like grass growing like under these stumps or like through the floorboards, or even like there's moss on the table. I'm kind of partial to this aesthetic, but I do think it
Hmm.
really kind of livens the scene up and kind of pushes the storytelling more. Like almost like I think you were mentioning this as well, Biaro, that like you're kind of considering like a hobbit hole sort of thing. And when you think of a hobbit hole, you think of like dangling vines and like moss. I just think even these little hits of grass that I've already been throwing in already kind of liven the scene up a little bit more. Um, like this lamp is really cool, but it's so far in the back. It's like you spent a lot of brain power considering this lamp, and it almost looks like there's a fairy in here, which is really funny.
That is cool.
But that's the kind of thing where it's like maybe there should be like 3 of them lined up, or like
Hmm.
figure out a way that to have one I don't know, hanging from the ceiling, kind of like in the mid ground, right? So that you can kind of capitalize on this like interesting idea you have going on,
Yeah.
and you're not wasting it in just like this tiny little portion of your like overarching painting.
Yeah,
um yeah,
it's
what are your
tough.
thoughts?
I think I can see like with the amount of detail and love that's put into the characters, it
Mm-hmm.
seems like the entire painting, like you wanted to put in that much detail here. But even with the like the boon that using 3D modeling gives us by giving lighting reference and texture reference and everything, um, it also can be really intimidating because you think, well, now I have this perfect object,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to sully it with my shitty scribbles on top of
Mm-hmm.
it, you know? It's like, 'cause then I'll ruin it, and then I won't have the perfect like lighting reference that I worked so hard in Blender to make. Um, so I think like when I first started using 3D stuff as references, like that totally crushed me. Um, and I I am wondering if maybe that also happened to you, and so you thought like, well, I just have to focus all my attention on the characters. I can't like put my um you know effort onto the spicing up the environment, because the environment in here, like I feel like it needs more spice. It needs the lived in quality that the characters themselves have. Like
Mm-hmm.
they've been decorating their hats. They
Yeah.
probably want to decorate their living space just as much. Like the
Yeah.
table needs to be covered in hand woven placemats, and that like have little flowers in them, and there should be like earthenware jugs all over the place, and um shelves full of curing cheeses and cordials and stuff. Like it is very hobbity.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe there's a poster on their wall for the next event, like
yeah, the next like
get
town
together.
hullabaloo,
Yeah.
right? Um, so yeah, it's so tough to.
You're having to try to sell an imaginary situation that nobody's ever seen before, right? So what
Mhm,
you kind of have to end up doing is consider things from life. Like what does a party look like? Like think like a party
mhm.
goer or a party host, and think about all of the things that would be in this party, right? Um, and I know it's a big ask, but that's also why I am saying too. This is definitely an ambitious piece. Um,
I
so
think BRO's epithet is BRO the ambitious. Like
yeah,
that is
yeah,
just who you are as an artist, which is like as a an artist who is learning and like always trying to push themselves, like you should be ambitious. Don't
hmm
hold back on your craft. Um, like playing it safe is never going to get you anywhere. So
hmm
um, please keep working. Please keep doing your thing. Because every time you bring something, it's we've got something to talk about, and we have um, ideas and enthusiasm for you, which I like, and I'm
hmm
happy that you are here. Um, so yeah, good job.
yeah,
is
definitely.
is basically my TLDR.
On a more technical note, the one thing I do want to mention is there's a lot of warm going on, but then you have this cool window light happening, and an easy way to tie in all of your colors is to literally grab some of these colors and to like gently put them on the planes, you know, top planes in this scenario that would be receiving that kind of like ambient light. And essentially, what ends up happening once you mix these colors is you're kind of getting grayish, bluer versions of these warm reds. And it just kind of like balances everything out. Like, so if you just look at this stump that I kind of scribbled on, if I turn this off, you'll notice it just feels so like red. The gray just cools it down a little bit and gives it a little bit more variation.
Mm-hmm.
So I was starting to do that on some of these plates as well. And then the other thing you might want to consider, I'm not great at plotting these, and that's why it's good to have a 3D program kind of do this for you. But you almost want to like imagine this like guideline, right, of where the door is kind of casting, right? So there'd probably be blue light like in this perspective. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there'd be like blue hitting on the table. I don't think I plotted that right, but hopefully you can understand. It'd
Vaguely,
be something
right? Yeah.
something more like this, right? It would be something like that. So
Doesn't need to be
that's something to,
perfect, just needs to be convincing.
yeah, something to consider as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for that one. I think the other thing too is just some of these shadow planes. It's like you kind of you're showing a light side coming from this light, but what we really need is a cool light side. Like, can you see like how immediately it's like, oh, that already tied in the colors. Now we've got a warm shadow and a cool light, which makes sense in this context. So just watch out for some of those things as well.
Hmm.
Um,
Uh, we have a couple of new people in the audience, and I just want to say hello to them.
yeah, thanks for joining,
Um,
guys.
yeah. I see Matilda's here. Hello, Matilda. And also Ricky Starfish and I can't read for some reason. Why is my brain broken? Kali
Calypso?
Calypso, thank you. Um, but yeah, welcome in.
Yeah,
Good to have you.
cool. Oh, it shows me like a big thumbnail of this little guy. Okay, here. Biaro
Oh yeah.
commented as well. Let me see. Thanks, guys. This was my first time using 3D that I set up as a main reference. I have lots to learn when it comes to simplifying composition to be less work. Quite a while back, I decided to start trying these prompts into a consistent world building project. That is one of the main reasons for
Hmm.
the characters share the animal features. I haven't fully gotten to like a bestiary yet, but most characters are very humanoid and don't have digit grade legs with by design. Okay, while the more prehistoric era of the world does include that. I took lots of notes on this. Thank you both. Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense then.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is that you're thinking about it at this stage when you're in a world building kind of project.
Yeah, absolutely. But like the fact that you're putting in um consistent thought across the board and that like if things are changing and morphing and you're like, okay, uh Nick and I were talking about this before we started streaming. It's like you can definitely make those little forest guys who look like, little foxes and badgers who are basically just little humans with animal features work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it has to be like very consistent and it's got to have like the great sort of uh, stylistic spin on it
Mm-hmm.
that uh,
I think
really claims it,
yeah, it's
if that
kind of
makes sense.
so the way you were drawing arms is very like this, and then like a hand, right? So it's like how can we push these elements to be more interesting, these simplified elements, especially when it comes to like an animal, right? So like, I was trying to do like poke out the fur more and kind of keep it in line with like the deltoid, and like I
Hmm.
don't know, poke out the elbow a little bit more, and maybe there's a more of a tuft of fur like kind of on the outside of the arm. Hopefully you guys can understand my little like scribble thing, but basically
Yeah,
just like trying to have more of a rhythm with how you're plotting out these shapes to give it more of a oomph to the style.
exactly. Yeah. I ramble on for 10 minutes when Nick can say it in three.
No, it's all right. We both needed to get there. Okay, cool. So this is Markov's piece, and he did mention that this was like total, not like 100% completed. So we'll definitely like acknowledge that. Um, and yeah, he was showing me kind of how he started this piece, and he like started with the sort of like base shapes of the tree,
Mhm.
and then it's like it kind of like turned into the rest of the piece. I thought that was kind of an interesting way to um, approach like designing a scene, and I think to a certain extent I, I suggested to him earlier, like maybe try a way if you're going to start with these big shapes to start a little bit looser so that you're not committing
Mhm.
to a composition too early on that you're like, I gotta move this whole piece or whatever. Because I do
Yeah.
think there's some just general elements that feel like not like I don't know, not like totally in balance, right? And he did say like he'll start with a piece that's like vertical, and then like it will end up being horizontal and stuff like that, and that's totally fine. But I think we also want to remember sort of like our main staples like rule of thirds and stuff like that. So this
Mm-hmm.
is a good example. Like this, we can make this a rule of thirds painting pretty easily, I think, but it's just like not quite there. You'll see once I put these markers, like it just doesn't totally feel like quite right. 66. Um, so
Yeah.
it just feels like there's way too much space going on top. So I almost like want to just crop it down a little bit. And what's cool too, if you do a crop here in Photoshop at least, it literally gives you a rule of thirds so that you can try to like squeeze stuff into where you want it to be. So I almost want this point to be kind of more or less like where Gandalf is.
Yeah, that feels a lot more comfortable.
Let's see. Try something like this. Right? And we're not getting this like grandiose scale thing, but the other thing too is we could still have this aspect ratio and then zoom out a little bit. I know I
Mhm.
did crop off a little bit of the side, but let's try that actually. And then kind of, yeah, something like this. Um, Kind of like this. Composition is hard, and it's definitely kind of like a balancing act. But that's why I have kind of learned to be like as loose as I possibly can when I'm starting a piece, so that I can really just like snip things and like move them around and all of that kind of stuff. Um, okay, so it also kind of feels weird. Let me go back to the original. It just it also feels weird like where are they kind of going, like there's not really any indicator. And again, I know this isn't like totally done, but it might be better to be like, okay, the clear path is going down like the same direction they're going, and then the alternate route maybe like kind of winds around the tree, and then it like looks like, okay, this is a very clear diverging
Yeah.
path, like it's just a thought, but something something more like that. um the other thing I would like to see as well is more variation in the plant life. Like if you're going to do like all this greenery, like I want to see like different sized plants, different shaped plants, like some flowers, like all of that kind of stuff. I have a tendency to kind of do these like three pronged little guys that just kind of break up the shape of all these like vertical sorts of things. You might want to find some reference of like a field in England, and then you'd like definitely get some really nice references of like types of plants and stuff like that too. But like maybe there's some blue flowers like near the tree that are kind of bunched up. It just kind of gives like points of interest in different spots of the piece. Maybe there's like white
Yeah.
flowers over here. Um, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts while I'm kind of doing this, Alice?
hmm Um, well, I did want to comment. I think Markov, you're like a really um, gifted landscape artist. I think that your um, attention to detail in the way that you portray natural elements is really um, very impressive. Um, and uh, when you are able to nail that in like conjunction with the other elements like composition and like, adding these little areas of design, um, uh, like eye leading, then you're going to have like a knockout piece. I think it's really hard to when you haven't gotten just through repetition the uh, these guidelines like stuck in your head. It can be so frustrating to try to remember, like, okay, composition rule of thirds, or like, trying to lead the eye, and then I gotta like break up this area because it's too big. I need to have some like areas of interest, or think about the variation of texture or scale, or blah blah blah. Like it's super overwhelming. But like have confidence that with time it and with practice it does just become more ingrained. You don't have to remind yourself to do these things. um and then like you'll sort of sit back after a painting session and be like, oh look, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
I did that without thinking about it. That's pretty cool. So yeah, that's like the reason that we can do these critiques, because um we've done it enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like watching Nick, I'm like, I don't know that I would like think to have that path go off in that direction. Like, how did Nick get to that point where he can just think of that? I'm like, oh yeah, it's because he's done a lot of this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about mileage, and you just kind of like start piecing things together. Um, I think a lot of it is personal preference, but some of it is it almost becomes like an intuition thing, right? Like you learn a rule, and then you're like, okay, like I can kind of visualize that rule. Like I was saying, the rule of thirds. I'm not trying to be super anal about it. Like I don't think I have it exactly, you know, how you would set something like that up, but it's close enough that I can kind of like eyeball it and like move things around to kind of just like feel it's like a rhythm thing. I think I said this with when I was talking about like designing the character, and this is something that I learned about in Andrew Loomis's creative illustration. He talks about like rhythms and paintings. It's like you want to have areas of rest and then areas of busyness, and the busyness should like be punched up right next to the areas of rest. And you kind of just want to feel your way through a painting, and that's also why I
Yeah.
would recommend being a little bit looser with your starting compositions, because I think it enables you to have more of that intuition um, as you're kind of like doodling, before you like just start laying down all of these textures and all of that kind of stuff, because I know how tedious and time consuming this stuff can kind of become. So hopefully that makes sense. He did show me another piece he's working on now. It was like a repaint of like, I think he said it was his first digital painting, and it looks
Hmm.
really badass. So hopefully he'll share that once he's
Right
done.
on.
Um,
Oh, I had
yeah.
one quick thing to add. So I know Markov, that you sort of said like, oh well, this piece is also fan art, so it's like less um important or impressive or whatever. Um, and I've had mentors who have like shown me their portfolio that is almost entirely fan art. Um, and not like sort of blatant fan art that's like, like here is Gandalf and he's fighting the Balrog and it's so like, well, clearly Gandalf, but it's like I wanted to paint this scene from Lothlorien. I love the tree, so I'm imagining what it looks like in my head. So it's not like a scene from the movie by Peter Jackson, but it's like I'm taking some of this IP that I love and I'm reinterpreting it, and I'm not gonna like put so much like extra special sauce from what somebody else has already created, but I'm going to like imagine the way that I see it in my head, and I'm gonna paint that and like do a lot of my own creation to show off in a professional setting. And yeah, like it was just I've seen a lot of professional, not like that. I've seen a lot of portfolio work from um, people in the industry that's like, yeah, here's a lot of stuff that I would do if I were working on Star Wars. Here's what I would do if I were working on Lord of the Rings,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. So playing in that imaginary space is perfectly acceptable as far as I'm aware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. All right. I think that covers it for that one. All right. Let's take a look at Megalit's piece. All right. Sweet.
These little drunkards.
Yeah. Yeah, these guys are really funny. So Megalit's been working with this sort of theme of these little why is this not my oh, control R. Keep pressing the wrong thing. These like little shadow I forget what does she call them? They're like little shadow like dust creature kind of things. But my favorite part about this piece is that they usually have these little masks on, but because they're drunk and I guess like unashamed, like their masks are down in the suds of the beer. I like that this little creature like is in the actual beer. I like that they've got like these red cheeks and everything. It's just a really cute little illustration. Um, the one thing that Alice and I did bring up is uh, Meglit has done a lot of these pieces that are like kind of have just like a blank background, and that's fine, right? But I would like to almost see this be just a little bit more of an like a true illustration with like is this on a table like see it in a scenario even if it's more abstract just like I don't know paint in some like wood paneling down here or like
Yeah.
whatever um put some like candles in the background or like a bookshelf or something like that. I don't know if that would take away from it, but it might just be something to kind of think about as she moves forward. The other thing with Megalit's pieces too, I can see she's starting to get the lighting a little bit better with the wood, but these little guys just still feel kind of flat, and I really want her to try to start pushing the rendering.
Hmm.
And I'd really encourage her to do some studies of like Pixar movies because that's when you can
Yeah.
really see like the simplified forms with like really beautiful and like correct lighting
Hmm.
around them, right? So they just, even though
Yeah.
they're like these little dark creatures, like they should just have more oomph to the
Substance.
yeah
Yeah.
substance to the rendering. It'll just make them more interesting. The other thing I'd like to see on them too. Oh, didn't mean to do
Whoa. Here we are up close and personal.
that. I almost want to see like, dude, what is going on? Sorry guys. Come on, zoom out. I want to see like little like designs on them for some reason.
I
I
thought that
don't
would be
know.
really sweet. Like they each have their like little personal pattern. I
Yeah,
guess that's on their masks, but if
yeah.
they had like a little sort of
I don't know. You can
yeah,
go do
yeah.
this however you want, but like I don't
They're
know.
holding acorns. I just realized they're so
Oh my
freaking
god, I did
cute.
just I just realized that too. That's so funny. Um I think Meglet also just needs to push her values a bit more and I almost just want to
Hmm.
straight up do a levels adjustment on this.
So I do that all the time because I have a really hard time getting dramatic with my values.
Mhm.
I'll be like halfway through a painting and go, I'll start like blocking in the color and then do the like sort of preliminary light shadow. And I'll go like, this is looking pretty pastel.
Yeah.
It's not dramatic enough for the light that I've got on it. I just need to slap an adjustment layer on it and go like, you know, uh, just expand the levels a little bit so
Yeah.
that it looks more realistic. And then I'm like, okay, now I can work a little more in depth, which is one of the like benefits of working digitally is that we can
Hmm.
use these tools to help us and continue uh, expanding our understanding of the way that light and shadow works.
Hmm.
Um, I think Inside Out would be a good reference for these
Hmm.
little guys because all of the little like mental characters have this sort of like fuzzy texture to them, but they're also
Mm.
like kind of substantial. They look like little sprites.
Yeah, that could be interesting too, is like actually trying to look for some sort of texture to give them that you can start rendering
Hmm.
out so that they don't feel so like flat, I guess. And I know Megalith's kind of going for a specific style, but I don't know if she can start like really rendering these out and them literally looking like they're a screenshot from a Disney movie, like
Yeah.
that's gonna say a lot for her portfolio. So yeah, I'd almost recommend like looking up one of these movies, seeing how their characters are being rendered, and seeing if you can just do like a character study of yours, like in that style. I just think that would be really cool and help push you a bit. Um,
I feel like also a lot of like very high budget anime movies, like Miyazaki movies, they do wonderful things with like getting for some reason I think these little creatures are sort of jelly. They could be jelly like.
mm,
So a sort of like blobby character.
mm-hmm.
Um, I think a lot of Miyazaki movies have little sprites or fairies that are um, uh, rendered that way, and uh, Eglet could do some studies from them. Um, Cell shading is obviously very different from um, Meglet's kind of more rendered style, but uh, it can be kind of fun to do a study off of that and then see like, okay, how can I translate that into my the way that I work?
Yeah. I just got like 10 message notifications at the same time. I don't know why. I just like the
Yeah.
way you just
Oh,
check the
Meglet's here.
chat.
Hello. Hi, Meglet. And then Markov was suggesting to put some metal ring around. Oh no, Markov said the the rings on the
Yeah.
um
The
mug need buttons. And then
oh, but
Calypso
yeah, yeah,
leveled
good
up.
call.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, 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 good call.
Hmm.
Like the little
Yeah.
peg things.
Meglet also we chose your piece as our
Winner.
selected honored winner
Yeah.
uh, for the month. So yay! Thank you for submitting. We love this piece. Um, we felt like it was very like complete as a um, interpretation of the prompt, and also it was kind of subversive in that these little guys are actually inside the mug, which is really cute.
Hmm.
So good on ya. I really like this piece.
So, what I'm this is like just straight up a rendering pass that I'm trying to do a little bit just to kind of show Meglet some examples of like where she can be pushing things a little bit more. So like, you have these cracks in the wood, like really pump up those values so they appear more like. Do you see how it's just feeling more like solid now? And that really has to do with pushing your contrast in values, and then you can kind of like put a little lip on the other side of the crack to just give it a little bit of depth, and that's just going to keep pushing these more and more. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, the metal as well. I guess she's sort of hitting the highlights on the top because this looks like it's top lit, which is great. I think maybe we can get like a higher sort of like reflection going on the side as well. And then, yeah, it's almost like,
Ricky's
oh, go ahead.
Ricky was suggesting some stains on the wood for more realism.
Mm, yeah. And then the other thing I did was I hit the sides of it again with like a cooler gray, and that helps sort of balance out this like the warmth that's in the wood.
Mm.
Yeah, some stains, especially like where the suds are sort of flowing down. I think yeah would help with that realism factor. Like it's seeped into the wood, and like finding a wooden barrel like this is definitely something you could find online like extremely easily. So you could literally just find a reference of it and just paint it, and then it would look like super realistic. It's almost like you're getting a study in as well as an illustration. So something to think about as well.
We've just been hanging. Um, Meglet said she just got up to get ready for work.
Nice. Oh yeah, she's been working like a night shift, I think.
Oh boy.
That's rough. Um, yeah, it's like the tops of these little guys' heads should just be a little bit brighter. I mean, it's like that basic sphere,
Hmm.
sort of thing.
Yeah,
Just
little shadelings.
yeah. And the masks too, like just feel so flat. Like
Hmm.
what can help is to give them almost like a shift in plane, even if they're supposed to be relatively smooth. It'll help to like show a plane shift on the edge just so that it looks like it's able to kind of cup around somebody's face.
Yeah, even if their face is a little
Like
black blobby.
flat. Yeah. I think hardening a lot of these edges is going to help as well. I see the ring has been hardened, which is
Hmm.
nice. All right, let's just take a look back and forth. Yeah, so pumped up the contrast, trying to get more variation in colors. Yeah, adding the buttons on the metal. Cool. All right, nice piece. Let's move on
And
to the next one. This is Powell's piece. This is really cute, as always.
oh my gosh,
I
this
like the like
is
little
just
cat
darling.
thing that's like drinking the milk on her head. And he got his duck back in. I think on the last piece it
Yay!
was missing. I think I had to draw his duck in for him on his it was a Mario piece, right?
Yeah.
Um okay, cool. I think man, it's like I can't ever even critique his colors cuz his color palettes are like honestly amazing. I think more what I always nitpick about his work is his forms because his rendering
Mm.
quality is like beautiful. But I just think Pal, you need to take a just a little more time just to really think through how things are in perspective. So like her arm, right? Like I know we're going cartoony, but I still want to see like her like like the foreshortened arm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The hand also just looks like really like big and kind of unfinished. Um, go something like that. Um, I think starting to think like this, and maybe that's what it is too. Maybe you just need to spend a little bit more time drawing, because I, I I think I've seen you kind of like start blocking out your colors very early. It might help to just start practicing some like really general forms or start drawing some of your characters and try to figure out like how these shapes are moving. So like here's another example of like her face, right? Like, oh man, she's such a cute character, but the face just it needs to be perfect if you're going with these simplistic shapes. And again, we can kind of go back to kind of those Disney references, but it helps to find the actual center of the forms.
Yeah. I I
And that,
think
yeah,
the I wonder if Pavel, if you are like more of a painter first and a like drawer second, um because like your painting, as Nick said, is like really beautiful, and your ability to blend color is like a, definitely beyond my ability. So I think, yeah, it's just like if the edges were a little cleaner for like pretty much every shape, um, it would feel like so on point.
yeah,
And like sometimes when I'm painting, I will take a that hard brush and like redefine edges that got lost, um,
whoops,
for my own reference, or uh, just to like make sure that something that got kind of blended over is right back where it should be. Um, because that even if you did like the most precise, beautiful sketch in the world, while you're painting, like those things just get mooshed. Because sometimes you got to go in with a big brush, or you're filling in blocks of color quickly. Um, so I wonder, like in your painting process, do you really just do you go without a sketch, or do you like sketch in paint?
I think he kind of, I think he, from what I've seen, he does like a really
Mhm.
loose sketch, and then
Mhm.
just starts blasting with paint. And
Just
in
start blast.
in a certain sense, because he's doing all these like illustrations for children's books, like he kind of
Hmm.
needs to be quick, which I get, but I think that's
Yeah.
why he needs to start practicing drawing on the side, because it will allow him to see these forms in paint a lot easier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
You can also like the lasso tool can be your friend.
but I
For
don't think it's the lasso. I don't think it's his edges. I think it's like, do you see do you see the center lines are not,
Yeah.
like the face is like warped kind of, and he needs to start visualizing like a circle, and then like
Hmm.
this, you know what I mean, and then seeing
Yeah.
on the backside it's dotted like this. And I think that's what's been kind of missing, unfortunately. And I think, like you said, once he nails that, oof, this is going to be a force to be reckoned with. These illustrations. So
Yeah. That's totally true. It can be really tough when you're working on a 2D like plane to remember that you were trying to depict something that is a 3D form.
yeah,
Um, and that like stuff takes up space, and it isn't just, it's not just like this, it's actually like this. Um, and you can't just sort of like stack objects on top of each other. You have to be thinking like, okay, well, this has a curve to it, like, volume matters.
yeah.
Um, so
And
I'm
I
I'm
I
trying to
see
think about the
this in other people's work. So hopefully, me kind of drawing over this will help other people kind of see some things that might be not quite right with their stuff too.
Mhm. Yeah, maybe we should do another figure drawing night. That could help.
Yeah, I think Markov mentioned that earlier. He really liked that. So
I did too. It was fun.
yeah. So I think it's just going to help the storytelling so much more too, because like now the cat kind of has like a little bit of perspective on it,
Hmm.
and it doesn't feel so like these creatures, the sheep and the pig, feel like very bunched up. Like you could maybe push one forward and one back a little bit more.
Hmm.
Like maybe the pig head should be more back, and he's like really having to struggle to look over the railing, whereas the sheep is taller. You know what I mean? Like
George Piggy.
it just, yeah, kind of messing around in this way helps you balance your composition a little bit more.
Hmm.
Um, but the storytelling, as always, is really cute. Yeah, even this cow head, it's like I almost want it to be like tilting a little bit more, and I know that's a lot harder to draw, but it's almost like the cow is giving her like a side eye kind of look, which is going to help sell the illustration a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it you can kind of uh, it's like a subtlety in the positioning of the major objects is what really makes a illustration feel like beautiful beyond just like a really nice color palette and lighting.
Hmm.
So, um, all right, is anyone saying anything else in the chat?
Let me see. Looks like people are just loving on Powell because it's a very adorable piece. And Powell says, "Yes, great idea. Wow, the line work is way better. I understand what you were saying." And
Cool.
thank you guys. Of course.
I
Thank you for
th-
submitting, as always.
so this is Star Corpse's piece. I
Hmm.
don't know if this is Ricky Star in the chat, but I think this is another good example of what I was just talking about. So I might just do more of a sketch over because honestly, the
Hmm.
lighting and the colors in this is like fantastic. Like we're seeing a direct lighting source.
Hmm.
I'd maybe watch out for this cast shadow. I don't know if it's totally right. This is where you might want to just get a 3D model and pose it, or just like take a
Hmm.
picture of yourself really quick and plot the cast shadow. But I like that where we're falling off into shadow, we're getting more blues in the dress, in the skin, on the side of the horse, all that kind of stuff, and that contrast feels awesome. If I had to critique one more thing, I think in the background, it's okay that it's like fuzzy, but it's like at this point I'd almost make it a lot fuzzier because these like stick things just feel like kind of wonky. Um, I can see that the this artist is kind of referencing the style of like how do you pronounce it, Vlop, WLOP. Do you know that artist?
WLOP.
Yeah, I think I
Wop.
yeah, I always forget it. I think it. I don't know if it's a guy or
WLOP.
girl, but anyway, they paint like these kind of like elven, like really beautiful characters with like really ornate dresses, and yeah, this
Hmm.
style just kind of reminds me of that, which is cool. Um,
Uh, Ricky Star says it's not her,
okay,
but it's still cool.
okay,
Um, and we lost Markov. He had to go, but
okay. No
um,
worries.
yeah.
All right, let's see. So,
I have to look up this WLOP person or
I think you,
WLOP.
yeah, WLOP. I think you'd really like it. It's up your alley.
Yeah, I vibe with pretty dresses and sparkly jewelry.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me when I see artists who really excel at things that I struggle with, and
Mm.
then are struggling with things that I find like easier.
Mm.
Um, I've always found the drafting part to be more comes more easily to me. But then like light and color and like um getting a good composition, like those are difficult for me.
Hmm.
Um, Star Corps has like this is a dramatic, cool, well lit, well like uh I I wanted to come up with a better word than colored, but it is a well colored piece.
Yeah.
Um, like the light falls across it very beautifully. Um, but you know, the thing that's lacking is a little bit of like draftsmanship, like you're working on now,
Hmm.
and it really goes to show that like everybody works in a different way,
Hmm.
and you can't really when you're approaching another artist, you should always go like understanding first. And um, this is just sort of like general advice for everybody.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, I guess try to think about their process and their um, the way that they like explore a piece before you like jump to offer like hard and fast critique because not everybody works the way that you do, and not everybody's like artistic brain paths are set up the way that yours are. Um, but isn't it fun to discover like how other people work?
Yeah, yeah, it is interesting. Because even when I've tried to work in ways that other I've seen other people work, like when I was younger and I
Mm-hmm.
was still like experimenting a lot, I would do a lot of like blocking out my characters in like grays. I think that was kind of more the style at the time,
Mm-hmm.
like just using thick shapes. But now I'm just like, you know what? Like it's easier for me to just draw it and to wrap my head around line work, even if it's rough, and then I can
Mm-hmm.
kind of fill in details as I go. And I always find myself just going back to that like every single time because it's kind of like what I grew up with doing.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah, I guess that's also a reason to take what we say with it like a slight grain of salt,
mhm,
because we're going to give you advice based on our experience and our perspective,
mhm,
um, based on how we were taught and the way that we think about how to approach a piece. So if it like really grates against your feelings and your like approach as an artist, you don't have to listen to us.
yeah. I think though it's kind of like you don't ever want to have things go in one ear and out the other, but just
Yeah.
because somebody gives you advice doesn't mean you have to take the advice. I think it's always important to consider advice that's being given to you, especially when it's from someone that has experience and that's why they're giving advice in the first place. But um, yeah, it's like yeah, you kind of have to just like be your own self critic and be like, okay, does what they're saying work for me, or can I
Hmm.
apply what they're saying, or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
I was like thinking, I don't know why, like almost like she's got the like holding it like backwards like that, but yeah, maybe the way you're, it's kind of
Yes,
weird.
my beautiful goblet here.
Yeah. Um, Almost like the stem was like behind her arm, like it's between her fingers. But I don't know if that makes that would be kind of well. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't be weird because then you spin it around and drink it like this. You know how when you hold like a wine glass, you kind of hold it like this, like in between
Yeah,
your yeah.
it can be kind of fancy. For some reason, like I'm only seeing half of you in my screen, so I have to like
Oh,
look at.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, I. Here's a little inside baseball, guys. I'm on my iPad today in an office building as opposed to in my home on my own work computer. So I'm like doing a lot of weird stuff, and like I can only see half of Nick right now.
It's all
Um,
right.
so we're, you know, working the way that we can.
Yeah.
What is Matilda saying? Getting an outside perspective. It's good to consider advice, even if you pick and choose what you can apply to your art. Getting an outside perspective on things is always good. That is very true.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm being like overly constructive with my drawing, like in a literal sense, just to kind of show you
Hmm.
guys how I'm thinking about this. But I'm literally trying to like visualize the side plane of the head because this is such a dramatic like angle, right? Like we'd be seeing a lot under the chin, and then we'd be seeing sort of the side of the head like this. But when you're going for crazy perspectives like this, like you probably want to try to to block some of these things out, especially if you're like unsure.
Yeah.
The face before was just looking like very squished, and I don't know, just like not totally right. So I'm
The
doing,
features were kind of all towards the bottom of the face,
yeah.
which at least when I'm sort of working really fast and I'm trying to draw somebody, with their head tilted in a weird angle, like I tend to just sort of bunch everything down, because you think like, oh yeah, perspective, that makes sense.
Hmm.
You, in a lot of situations, you got to think like, all right, I have to draw it. Like you just have to do the perspective math and like plan everything out carefully, like Nick is doing, which is frustrating. But when you've got a tough angle like this, it's kind of the way you got to go.
Well, also when you break it down into like these simple shapes, it's a lot easier to like kind of work your way around the piece.
Hmm.
At least for me. The thing I'm like super confused about, that's why I put a question mark, is like I can't tell if the character is supposed to be like this is her butt and she's kind of sitting like sideways on the
Hmm.
horse, or she's straddling the horse like you would normally sit on it. It just feels like I guess the horse head would be very foreshortened. Man, having
Yeah.
figures sitting on horses is very hard. Like that's why I don't do it super often. It always looks cool once you finish it, but
Yeah, I always sort of draw people when they're on horses sitting in the same position, which is
mm-hmm,
like very English posture with their butt really high up, and then it
mm-hmm,
looks really awkward. Um, yeah, when I was looking at this before, I was like, her dress is kind of melding into the horse,
yeah.
which makes it really difficult to interpret. Um,
So
so it's probably it's up to Star Corps, um, to figure out, but
especially
yeah.
too because this character has like this crown, like these are all elements that like require you to have an understanding of perspective, right? Like we need to
Hmm.
know how everything is kind of like, you know, fitting into space in order to like accurately draw this sort of stuff. Like we as humans can like see very easily when something is like not quite looking right, even if you can't like total, even if you're not an artist and you can't like put your finger on like what the issue is. So that's why it's like so important that you try your best to really make it as right as it could possibly be, you know,
Yeah,
from the
just
beginning.
another frustrating bit about being an artist. It's like even people who aren't skilled can tell if you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You can't just fake your way through it. But yeah, that applies a lot to like humans because we've got this like evolutionary thing about human uh, um, proportions and stuff. Like we're really good at recognizing that. But when it comes to things that are like in some cases you can fudge perspective in a way that um, is either, you don't have to do it perfectly precisely, or you can tweak it to be a little more dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, that's just a little anecdote that doesn't really apply here, but fun fact.
Well, there's definitely, yeah. I mean, I just realized I think I know what's bothering me about the poles in the background is that we want our perspective to be more like this, right? Like this is kind of how we're like looking up at this character. Um, and this pole is coming in like this. And it's like kind of breaking my brain as to how that's working. Now, if we had a pole coming in like this, but we're, putting rings on it so we can see it in space, then it's a lot easier to wrap your head around. But just because it's like one solid stroke, it's very confusing
Mm-hmm.
what you're kind of looking at. So this kind of painting is so up my alley. So I'm like totally like doing more than I think I need to do. This is just fun drawing over this one. But I don't want to take up too much time. Um, yeah, hopefully all this stuff helps, guys. But I think that's it for the pieces. As always, if you guys have questions about anything, feel free to message us in the general chat or DM us or whatever. But I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us, and yeah, we'll see you next time.